Hi, welcome to an episode of the Jet Rails podcast. I'm Robert Rand, and today I'm joined by a couple of friends in the industry. I guess you could call us automation evangelists. We've all, at one point or another, been involved in integration as a service. And so, with no further ado, let me introduce Dave and Wayne. Gentlemen, would you do the honor of saying a few words about yourselves and uh, what your background is, what you do these days?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start, Rob. So my name is Wayne Thompson. I'm the director of business development for Optazi, which is an e-commerce and web development agency covering Toronto. We have offices in Toronto and in New York. My background is very similar to you guys. I come from the integration space, but I've worked in the industry, the e-commerce industry, for about 13 years. Having worked at both front end and back end solutions, ranging from ERP systems to integration and working at a couple of different agencies. So I have a pretty good background when it comes to working with different merchants in various verticals.
Awesome. Thanks, Wayne. So my name's Dave Malda, and I work at a company called eBridge Connections, and we're headquartered out of just outside of Toronto in a place called Burlington, Ontario. We do service the North American market. That's our primary focus. And I've been there for about 12 years now. I guess my journey up to and including there involved, at one time being a programmer, so a developer for about 7 years, and then moved over to the sales and marketing side over time through a couple of other businesses, and then have been at eBridge for the last 12 years, primarily in a marketing and a sales role. So I manage the sales teams there right now. And our focus is to basically eliminate duplicate data entry from systems. So that could be e-commerce platforms into accounting packages. So we've been doing that for a very long time, and have a lot of experience in a lot of the different ERPs, but then also a lot of the growth e-commerce platforms that have come about in the last decade. So
Yeah.
And isn't it that interesting how, in all these years in the industry, some things have remained pretty, with a pretty good stronghold, I'd say, and other things have, of course, it's tech. Other things have come in and displaced, or, there are all sorts of words that relate to disruption in the market that have grabbed up market share, gained popularity. That's probably a great place to start. What do you find, folks? What do you gentlemen see as in demand these days when it comes to the various software platforms, when you're talking to merchants that are already established, up and running, and they're upgrading systems, they're trying to get to the next level?
From an agency point of view right now, what I've been seeing recently, especially with the changes in the market, is actually a combination of two things. Some of them that are really pushing to get online for the first time. There's still quite a lot of early adopters. They hadn't quite pulled the trigger, I guess, before the March, situation happened to us all. And they're realizing this is, going e-commerce is the way they're going to have to survive. Not only for customers that are selling products, but also I've been seeing restaurants, activities in those markets for delivery services, and just a combination of just trying to maintain their customers in various markets. And and then aside from brand new builds, it's companies that are upgrading or replatforming a little bit as well. So there's some of that. But the strategy is still, or the goal is still kind of the same. It's trying to stay ahead, and keep their customers, keep their customer base happy and growing.
yeah, and I can kind of dovetail into that, Wayne and Robert. I think that what we've seen, especially this year, around March, was a replatforming, but then also a branch out into sort of net new marketplaces. So, like an example might be Amazon. Requests or requests for Amazon integration have gone up. There's Instagram. There's sort of all these different marketplaces that these companies are trying to get out to just to increase sales and to kind of capture a bigger spot in the market, right? And so things like that have been pretty common, I would say, over the last 6 or 7 months. Things like pick up in the store, maybe some other scenarios that we would not have seen in the past have been fairly prevalent. I think the point of sale systems have really started to pick up, right? So things like Shopify POS, Lightspeed, there's a couple of others in that space where we've had requests for those types of integrations where that may not have been that frequently asked for in the past. So yeah, I would agree with Wayne. That's sort of been our kind of focus and viewpoint, and the requests we've been getting are really people getting out onto more marketplaces, whether it's Target Plus, Walmart Plus. There's this sort of surgence of platforms that are arising to help the merchant, and we happen to be in the middle of that as an integrator, and have tried to help those merchants. With the data that obviously is going to increase with people not being able to go travel in store, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's particularly interesting that you've got different market segments. So there's that, restaurant trying to get into e-com for the first time. And that, for some of us in the industry, we may not have seen as having the same kind of deep needs because they're servicing a very localized community. They're delivering to a particular radius, not the same as a national or international player in the e-commerce space. We've seen a lot of B2B businesses that couldn't operate the way that they would, and that have had to finally move forward and get online. And and so there's these different market segments that almost have, I'd say different needs, different software stacks speaking to them. But I think that sometimes some of the complexity gets missed at the first discussions, and I think that's in some cases what's held back companies for a while. So if you do have retail stores and you want to fulfill out of your point of sale software, your staff need to know when that order comes in and go pull it before you sell it to someone else and have it ready and waiting for curbside pickup or whatever it may be. And these systems just don't naturally talk to each other in so many cases. You're vested into this point of sale in your store, and and so you get caught up in those things. And at the same time, the software platforms themselves are changing. Like, Dave, you mentioned Lightspeed, and I think I noticed that they stopped offering their on-premise version, that they've gone completely cloud. So even what's going on with the softwares themselves, that they're evolving and changing.
Yeah. I think we're seeing, things that were going to happen anyways over the next 5 to 10 years, I think have really been just accelerated by this. It wasn't that this was never going to happen. It's just been accelerated. And you're right, the little nuances of things like, okay, we've sold something online and we got to make sure we don't oversell this product if someone walks into the store or goes for curbside pickup or something, right? Those are, you get into these unique situations where these things start to sort of rear their head. And I think in our business, we have encountered some of that stuff over the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Where people are bringing us scenarios that we maybe haven't seen before. And thankfully, we're flexible enough in our platform to be able to handle a lot of these things, but they are unique requests for sure. And I think these are things that just get built into the platform. They get built into the product. They're not going away. And they just help us help the merchant, now and down the road. So.
Yeah, there's definitely what I've seen as well is some of that strategy, even before this all kind of happened, hadn't been really in place, but even a sort of like an afterthought. Because I'll even ask questions about, where's the data residing? Is it in your ERP? Is it, are you thinking about doing any kind of automation? Just from our point of view, like, we just kind of need to know up front as well when we're building, say, on an e-commerce platform. And is that automation going to those systems? Is it going to a point of sale system at all? Is it going to, as I mentioned, an ERP? And sometimes it's like, we're just kind of managing in the store. It's, they haven't really kind of thought about it. Their volumes are maybe not, kind of critical at that point. And they're thinking, well, that might be a phase two. Once we, say they're trying this out for the first time, we'll think about that as phase two. So there's a lot of the companies, that are implementing like a new site, for example. It's usually like, like the front end marketing team and, the design group and stuff like that are usually kind of managing that. But, it would be good if they had some sort of a strategist that sort of like understands all the cogs behind the scenes, that you have to kind of think about, especially with the way things are. So as Dave was mentioning, I think because of what had happened, a lot more of those companies are starting to advance and learn and realize that, hey, we need to figure this stuff out right now. Otherwise, we're not going to be around in another couple of years. So,
and if anything, we may find out that more companies than we'd like to see wound up choosing too quickly under duress, and it may put them in a tougher spot for long-term success, for long-term integration. Because that's always the key. Somebody says, yeah, this is a great platform, or this is, great software. You can use this. It's going to do everything you need. But then you realize it doesn't talk to any of your other key systems. And, it's really not built well to play well with others, to put it mildly. And, so different challenges out there. How about on the reverse? Are there any software platforms that maybe either of you expected would be doing better, and have just been cooling off? Demand has waned more than you would have expected. Pun intended, Wayne.
Yeah, I caught that. I always refer to the great one. And sometimes I say my name, and it's surprising that if I say Wayne Gretzky, some people don't know who he is.
That's a shame. That's
not in Canada, I hope.
Spell my name. Anyway, sorry. In terms of software packages, and I have seen a rise. I would say, along the lines of for Dave as well, like ERP systems, like going more cloud-based. So, like the rise, like Acumatica, for example. I even looked at it a couple of years ago as a player in the market, and seeing a lot of the resellers in those spaces change their business focus because on-prem was really kind of going away. But at the same time, the merchants that we are working with are still on actually some legacy systems. So in the case of like some fashion brands around like AS400 or some other like back end system that is related to the fashion industry. So there still is a lot of it's going to take a while, I would say, but there's definitely a lot of up and coming platforms that are set to do quite well in the coming years.
Yeah, I think what we've seen, Robert, is I don't know if this is the exact same, but I think it's something similar to this. It's like a rising tide floats all boats, right? And I think rather than see things maybe go away, I think we've seen in our business and in our sort of ecosystem, a lot of people rise to the top. A lot of platforms rise to the top, right? Maybe even some things that that we maybe had not heard of before or that were infrequent. They've really, I think, risen to the top in this type of scenario, right? So what's really neat to see is the variety of options that are available for people. Things like I don't know the exact wording, but it's like I can go online and I can make payments. So I can buy this, and it's sort of I make 4 payments, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So some sort of a payment plan, or buy now, pay later.
Exactly. So a lot of those kind of solutions that I may have been aware of, but really never paid attention to see those things sort of pop up and I think be very useful is really neat to see. So I don't know if I can mention one that's maybe gone away a little bit, but I for sure have seen many rise.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think in some cases, there have been all of these companies, they didn't just start in so many cases, but they had smaller market share. So I think that you're right that, we've just seen some growth. I mean, I could probably rattle off if I had to right now, 10 companies that do split payments. It's a disease. I'm sorry. It's something that I do, but in my spare time, I just list out tech companies, but I'll make a game one day. It'll be fun at trade shows when those open back up.
He's got a whiteboard in behind the screen. It's got all.
No, if only. No, it's up here somewhere in that noggin of mine. But kind of circling around that. I talked to a merchant the other day. When you mentioned AS400, and they're still using AS400, and hats off to them because they definitely, I would like to think, got their money's worth out of it. But they're looking not so much just for a straight ERP, but they do manufacturing, so an MRP. And, and so we're talking about what's out there these days. And obviously, there are a few ERPs that really stand out, like NetSuite and Acumatica, and some that have more specialization out there, like Skubana. And there's any number of them now. I'm going to upset some folks that I skipped over them, but that is a long list for me to rattle off. And there are incumbents that have been in the industry a long time, like Sage, that that are still out there. I haven't heard much about what Microsoft Dynamics 365 has been looking like, and their move to the cloud. I haven't run into quite as many people adopting there, but I think the challenge is still the same. There's a lot of software out there, and how do I find something that isn't going to be overpriced, isn't going to be overcomplicated to deploy, but that's going to suit my business well. And I think that, now we're seeing that not only for these larger businesses that need this larger software, but given the complexity that's been integrated into commerce in general, into omni-channel commerce, we're really seeing that head into SMB more and more, where the shoppers expect these systems to work well together in terms of the user experience. They don't care how it happens. They just, want to get their stuff the way that they want to get it.
Yeah. That's actually a really good point, because even the small companies, the SMB companies, are expected to provide. Now they're being expected to provide a very similar experience as the big box stores. Being on, like, actually, I just worked on a project for a customer that they had been around for a long time, many, many years, in the health space. They used to have retail stores, but now they don't. They've actually gone purely online. So they have a e-com site, but the issue was their mobile apps, like their iOS and Android apps, were not, I guess, up to par. So they are revamping that so that they can provide, automated coaching, meal plans, like sell their meal plans, have like an integration so that customers can actually buy the product like on their mobile devices as well. So it's, so there's companies that are doing that, as well, that they may not be a pure retailer, but they're really trying to stay ahead of the customer demand, like really try to provide that customer end user experience that everyone's starting to really expect these days, and no matter what size they are.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think as a buyer, a bad customer experience when you're going through it, and it typically doesn't take much. It could be something as simple as maybe it takes more than 24 hours to get the tracking number or to see that it's been shipped, right? And I think you also know a really great experience. And I think one company that's really nailed it is Amazon. They have this expectation, and so do their customers, where you are in the know all along, right? So there's this transparency that's expected right up to actually just had something dropped off this morning where they said the courier had said, you are of 42 deliveries, you are number 16, and Amir is on the second delivery. Right, that was the detail in the email, and it was. I mean, to read that is fantastic.
Yeah.
Logistically, to figure that out is pretty wild, but that's what people expect, right? So I think we're just going to see more of that. And I have noticed that over the last probably 5 years at eBridge, companies that are coming to us for integration are speaking more real time, real time in terms of minutes, maybe not by the second or actual real time, but it is, say, a short window down to maybe 3 to 5 minutes where they expect this data to move back and forth, right? Whether it's updating inventory on a platform, or it's getting the tracking number back up to the platform so they can email the customer. We're talking minutes as opposed to, maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago, it was, maybe upwards of a half a day was okay, right? There was no expectations.
Yeah. Well, and there are logistical challenges that people don't always realize, because if they're using an older point of sale software and they've got a large product catalog, and now you want the inventory levels to be mastered in that system to be maintained there as the source of truth. And you want that to sync back up to the website, let's say, 100,000 products every few minutes. You're creating some logistical challenges for yourself. When you're not using software that is more modern and that can really deal with it on a record by record basis, as opposed to like uploading an entire CSV file of 100,000 products and making the website crunch all that data.
Yeah. If not, you can tell a solution when you're coming into something that's very old and you're sort of band-aiding things. And you can also tell when somebody's taking a best practice approach. They've got maybe a couple of diagrams together. They've got a source that's true for the data, right? Maybe it's Sage 100, and they're saying, okay, our products are all going to be kept in here. We're maybe going to have a PIM halfway through that enhances the data, and that, right? And they've sorted that out, as opposed to a different approach might be you're sort of just tacking on every time. And if you're creating your products up in, say, Magento, because that's the way you've always done it, and that's the way your admin people know it, it can really create some problems and challenges down the road, because, trying to take an order in where the product, that SKU, may not exist in Sage 100, for example, is going to be problematic. And then you get into, do you create the product on the fly? You really get into a lot of different challenges. Do you update the inventory down in Sage 100? Well, now you're sort of impacting, company financials, really, right? So there's a lot of different nuances that people don't think about, before they tackle some of these things, right? And often maybe they've inherited some things, right? And I think they call it like software baggage or something like that, right? And
technical debt,
tech debt. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes, they also just want the someone else to take care of it. The external experts to kind of come in. And say, how to we do? I mean, on both sides. So on the front end and the back end, you get what do you recommend as a best practice? What can you help us with to kind of steer us in the right direction? Is our wish list of things that we want to get done even doable? Like, are we dreaming? Are we dreaming?
Yeah.
Well, and in some cases, people are just working off of such limited information. A lot of the time, if you talk to one company that does one thing, they're going to sell you that one thing. And so technology evolves so quickly that here we were talking a few minutes ago about delivery status and tracking. And now there are some great apps. One of our most recent episodes was with a company that Relay Cloud that is helping to provide that user experience around the tracking that the e-commerce platforms don't provide on their own. There are other platforms like Route that are also up and coming. So they all have different features and they're out there. But, going back to mobile apps. You look at e-commerce companies, and there was a time when, for anyone with a sizable catalog, for anyone that was dealing with recurring customers. So look, if you sold mattresses, you really didn't need a mobile app, because when were people going to come back and buy another one 10 years later? It didn't do you so much good. But if you had 100,000 smaller items, let's say sporting goods, maybe it was very cool to have that. Now folks are, not that there's never a case for a mobile app. There certainly are cases, but a lot more folks are looking at progressive web apps, at PWAs, where the front end interacts more like an app, loads much more quickly, for mobile users, and they can save a tile in their phone with it, that they can access it almost like they would a traditional app, but they don't have to download however many megabytes, a 100 megabyte app or something in order to use the thing in the first place. They just go to it like they go to any website. So we're seeing a lot of that. And, on the e-commerce side, I've been crunching data recently to see where our user base sits, because in partnerships, it's not always the first thing that I look at day by day. We had, coming into Magenta 1 end of life, we had a larger number at the beginning of the year of Magenta 1 sites. And at this point, we do have a number of users, very healthy number, that are using our Magenta 1 end of life support, which adds all sorts of security layers. And we're pretty happy with how that's been going. And there was just a major incident called Card Bleed, where thousands of Magento sites got hacked, and looks like, based on the data that we're seeing, that our configurations and things held steady. And it's what you always want to see. We always try to take those things with some hubris, and knowing that there's always another security threat coming, but proactive. But so we went into that not knowing how long these users would stay on Magenta 1, because there were so many users that waited. And we're down to, I'm still finishing the data, but it's a fraction of what I thought it was going to be still on Magenta 1. Everybody's been making the migration to M2. And at the same time, we had to look at, would these users go to SaaS? Would they go to another platform? And, a lot of them did shop it. And that was interesting. I've had a lot of merchant conversations where it's quite clear who we, and I say we as the web host, who their platform, Magento 2, let's say, to be the incumbent there, since they were on Magento 1, was up against. And because we deal with sites that are more custom, they're snowflakes. We love them. It's I think that we've really seen a very high adoption rate for Magento 2, and maybe even, again, higher than I might have thought, given that people make decisions on all sorts of decision points that they plot out, and that's all well and good. But it's been an interesting year just to see growth and change. But with a lot of that growth and change, the core points of what these companies need, other than really, I think, around curbside and some things like that, they haven't changed. It's more velocity. So going back to, we've probably pushed things forward 5 or 10 years in a year. I think that's pretty accurate to where we all see the industry.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And,
I think Magento for us has been fantastic. And I can recall, actually, it's going back a while, but they were sort of our first, it was a Magento enterprise customer that came on board with eBridge. And they've been fantastic for us over the last decade plus. Really good customers, that, like, merchants that understand how to sell online, that have the flexibility to do some really great things, right, including returns, etc. And I think to just see the others sort of rise up as well has been pretty interesting, and to see the life cycle of, say, a Magento Run, right, and a community offering that really had a big following, right, that people could build on. Just to be able to be part of that is pretty cool. So Magento 2, I think over the last couple of years, we've also had it's interesting because we're on kind of the tail end. People typically have the selection made when they come to us, right? So we're data integration, we're accounting integration. The site, the platforms, the marketplaces are typically running, and there's an order volume that's causing them to go look for an integrator, right? So it is interesting. We're rarely on the selection side of the equation, and we're more on the I'm running this, and this. Can you help, right? And Magenta's been one that's been very common and very steady for us. So very, very neat to see.
Yeah, I talked to a Magento prospect this morning. They were looking at doing some upgrades to their platform. They actually had 5 retail stores selling like sports equipment. So definitely in that, definitely in that, definitely in that space. Trying to, as we were saying before, just kind of staying ahead of the curve with, but they were going through like a redesign. But they were definitely on Magento 2, so they had been using it for some time. They were coming to us just for guidance. Kind of what's recommended. We have this wish list of things that we want to get done. We need you guys to help us try to figure it out. It's sort of to try to get through this season. Not so much, trying to build something for Black Friday and that type of thing, last minute, which, I have actually seen that as well. But trying to just plan ahead, already planning for 2021. So,
it's even for agencies like Wayne, in the case of Optasy, your team has been getting more engaged with Magento this year, if anything, based on our previous chats. Have you found that to be kind of interesting that, the team has history with all sorts of platforms like Drupal, but seeing the opportunity to really service additional markets at the same time? I mean, we certainly see SaaS coming, really into the leadership role for the smaller projects more consistently. It's I think the mid and the enterprise that are really looking for the open source flexibility still, and that we haven't seen that particularly change. What's it like on the agency side these days? If you kind of have a choice of what you want to work on, why Magento?
It does offer a great deal of, as you were saying, being more on the open source side, it does offer a lot of flexibility, for our customers to work with. I have actually seen we're kind of split between Shopify and Magento actually right now. I've even seen activities for BigCommerce. We are not a BigCommerce partner just yet, but I've had some conversations just to try to see, kind of keep up with our customer demand and like where they're going. Because I've actually seen that trend into the more of the B2B space as well. So that's why I'm kind of, exploring that, because I think I've always actually seen that as a growth area for the last few years, in various capacities. So, manufacturers going online, like basically going reaching their customers directly. So it's just a matter of trying to have the right platform, the right fit in place to accommodate, the different kinds of clients that we're working with.
Yeah, we partnered with BigCommerce around headless commerce and our ability to host different apps and things. And so sometimes, did a podcast episode, must have been a good year ago, where we talked about the unlikely partnership of SaaS with web hosting. Sometimes, it's really about what the market needs. And it's even for all of us, we have to rethink ourselves, because the market's going to determine. As Dave said, when people come for integration, they typically have systems and they want you to do what needs to be done. We're all out there to service what the needs of the merchants and their end users are.
Yeah. I can think back during the last few years. It's a little bit of a different scenario than what we were talking about previously, but there has been customers that are thinking about the strategy, and it's usually companies that are on those older legacy systems, and they're currently evaluating new platforms like a Magento or a Shopify. And actually, quite often it is integration first. They're actually thinking, can this system work with our X number of the existing systems, or what do we have to replace in order to make everything as headache free as we can possibly make it? So, there is definitely companies out there, not some that aren't doing it, but there's definitely companies that are proactive in that regard and are planning it out properly. So, a lot of times, even on the, the platform side, I mean, when merchants are trying to figure out what they want, that's part of the evaluation. That is part of like, okay, is this going to work with my Microsoft, let's say Microsoft Dynamics 365, from the get-go? What's going to stop it from working with my existing point of sale system? Is there an integration connector in place? So some of these companies are thinking about those details.
Yeah. And I think second iteration is usually better, that they learn some of those lessons the first time around, that they outgrow systems, or, when they got their first website, they didn't need it to integrate. There weren't that many orders. Doing things manually wasn't a big deal. But then when it comes to the next time around, they know that they have to have plans around some of those things. As is the case with so many things in life, experience is the mother of both invention and I think.
Yeah, that's a good point, Wayne, because that is sort of the other side of the coin for us, is people that are maybe replatforming. They're running a certain ERP, and you're right, they know the pain that they've gone through, and they're saying, okay, we're going to replatform. We know the volume's probably going to stay the same, if not tick up. That's why they might be replatforming, right? To get a higher conversion rate, perhaps, but which means more orders, which means, can you integrate into my Dynamics 365 Business Central, right? For example. So yeah, you're right. The people that have learned the hard way, for sure, know to ask that question first. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of that's also coming from like having an internal team that built some custom solution, and that person or people have moved on, and now they've got this inherited thing that is becoming outdated. It's not functional, and for them to move forward, they're going to have to start thinking about more of a more of a cloud-based system, something that they can kind of grow and scale with, on a simpler way.
Yeah.
Essentially, another recent episode that we had was with the CTO of the Drupal Association, and one of the things that I found, particularly interesting to chat with someone in that role about was, at Drupal, it's open source like Magenta, but they, have their own unique community and ecosystem, and they, in essence, they have huge companies that are submitting to the core. And submitting modules and things. And so you get companies like Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson, competing companies, by the way, for-profit companies that are writing code, that are paying, their own developers to sit there and write code that they're giving up to the community, and that they're publishing for everyone to use in the world that is going to leverage Drupal as a content management system. And the takeaway from that is that for them, to build it all themselves, maintain it all themselves, and keep iterating on it and making it better and better all by themselves is expensive, time-consuming, unwieldy, in so many cases that there's a benefit to efforts to do things on a broader scale for a wider range of use case and a wider range of users, and I think that that's something that we continue to see in the market, that it's not always just about that one user. It's, how do we solve bigger problems than that as a collective? And, and how does that come back to all of us as a community?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, before we start to wrap up for the day, I usually ask at the beginning of these episodes about how the companies got their names. And I was too busy trying to think about how to pronounce Optaseed, because I didn't want to fudge that. Wayne, I'm going to throw this one to you first. Is there a company story there that you're aware of?
My understanding is it's viewing like seeing the fantasy. So just something, with the optics, and to just kind of putting those two words together, like optical and fantasy becoming optasy.
I love it. That's actually really cool. See, this is why we ask. And
It's kind of like it's not as complex as, like, say, Homer Simpson and the light bulb, coming out with the. You guys remember that episode?
I do indeed. And
forget the name of the company, but
yeah, I mean, eBridge connections. I can see like electronic, like email and so on, and bridging and connecting data. So I imagine that was pretty natural. That's some names got thrown around, and that's what stuck.
Yeah. Our founder and CEO originally started the company in '93. And it was called EDI Bridge. So EDI was our traditional, that's what we did. We big box retailers, companies that were selling into the Lowe's and the Home Depots of the world, they were required to do EDI. And so we had, the company was called EDI Bridge. And it was basically taking EDI documents into and out of accounting packages. And then over time, it was eBridge software. And then I think it was probably 10 years ago or so, 9 or 10 years ago, it moved to eBridge Connections. And the reason for that was we had branched from EDI integration into eCommerce, into Salesforce.com integration, into Microsoft CRM integration. And our platform is really, it's a universal platform, right? So we take data from many sources, we normalize it, and we push it into over 40 accounting packages. So there's quite a host of connections, you could say. And so eBridge Connections was sort of the next evolvement of our platform. And it's a SaaS play, and it just made sense. So it's been fun to watch that and to be involved in the different names and to just see it evolve over time with how the marketplace has evolved too and how the needs have evolved. So.
Yeah,
I think the old backpack software package. So it's been growing for a number of years.
Yeah.
I think I was one of the first employees at JetRails that didn't also get an eBound host email account because that company is around since 2000, and that's how they started. JetRails started off as a product and then became a brand and became really what the company chose to lead with as mission critical web hosting, and really that white glove touch to tailoring and optimizing and configuring and monitoring and managing and maintaining, and and really being a much more proactive service. And so I think we're still in the process of working through some of that legacy and branding, but sometimes you have to do it.
Yeah.
Your company has changed too significantly to not take a bold move like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Really interesting. So before we wrap, guys, any final thoughts, anything new coming down the pike, any words of wisdom? It's obviously a particularly unique year in the market and in the world. Anything we should all leave this episode with?
I don't know. Just keep a clear mind and just stay positive and stay pumped for the future, no matter what. That's my motto right now.
I can sort of I like that as well, Wayne and Robert. I think that there's been a bunch of companies that have really spearheaded, like Shipper HQ. Karen comes to mind, Quentin over there. The sense of ownership and care, if you will, to take companies that were really struggling, that had to go from offline to online, and to just sort of make a mini movement to help these people was really cool to see. Jamerson is another one that comes to mind. TJ there.
Sure.
Just helping out is I think that's what we can do. It's what we have to do, right? And to stay positive, to really look at this as a spot, I think, in the moment where we can really put our best foot forward, really help each other, and really help move things forward, right? And we all are running platforms here where we can do that, where we can help out, right? So I had one other thing I was hoping we could talk about. It doesn't have to be long.
Yeah.
The networking and the trade shows. I mean, that's all gone, right? I mean, Robert, I met you at Magenta Imagine, and then
way
other
back when,
events,
yeah.
right? And I always looked forward to that. I'm a handshake guy. I like meeting people. I like breaking bread and having a dinner or maybe a drink or something. And that's gone, right? And I was just curious what maybe you guys were doing to sort of, I guess, fill that void.
I mean, for myself, I make sure I'm having calls like this on a regular basis with various partners. So I've definitely been growing the partner aspect of the business as well as doing, the marketing side. So yeah, I mean, and actually I did have an occasional, I did have one meet up in person with one of the partners, and it was him and I both agreed it was like the funnest thing ever.
Yeah.
We hadn't had a lunch meeting in months, and it was a real treat. We did everything properly, but yeah, it was really good to actually be able to do a sort of normal thing. But
you almost don't know what you have until it's gone, right? Like
You're trying to prompt me to start singing, and if I have any subscribers, they will be gone so fast. I'm going to go backwards for a second because folks like TJ from Jamerson and Karen Baker over at Shipper HQ, they keep the industry as honest as you can keep an industry. That they don't hold back too much, and I think we all need more of that. More of those doses of reality and calls to action as needed. And so I have a sincere appreciation. These are people that I look up to in the industry as well. There's no shortage of people like that, which I think we can be proud of. So when Offline to Online was created, that I was one of the earlier members of the Slack group that was formed to get industry folks together to help these businesses that needed to get online fast. But before that project got wrapped up and shifted to other similar groups that were getting together and things, it was I want to say over 1,000 of us in the industry in one Slack group, just trying to do what we could do.
Just trying to coordinate and help. It's pretty cool. It's really great to see good come out of difficult things, right? And that's just the testament to this ecosystem for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's how the year's been going for me, that, every time I think that I should have more time on my hands because I'm not at trade shows and I miss them so much. Yeah. Life stays busy, that between Magenta One End of Life and, in web hosting, there was, as demand went up for e-commerce in general, we saw a lot of folks that weren't in scalable environments. Even, they had hosting from big companies, but it wasn't meeting their particular needs, or, they had hosting that didn't have the right management for security and things. And, going through all these things. And so because all these topics have been coming up, we've continued to stay, as a company and me individually, busier than I might have anticipated. So every time I think I'm going to miss out, and there have been various trade shows digitally that we've been able to attend. I haven't been doing quite as many of those because literally I've been staying that busy. But then again, my wife and I welcomed our second child this year, so so no rest for the weary. So I'll chalk up a little bit to that maybe this was a year where I was going to just be a little more tied up in the first place. Yeah,
I think we're actually going to be getting a new puppy very soon. So maybe even this weekend. So I'm going to be basically having to deal with another mouth to feed. Wow. And I think that will help us, with some of the take the edge off a little bit, I guess. But it's awesome. Going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting once we get back on.
Let's leave on this thought. 2020 doesn't need to be all about things that we can't do and we're not doing, but they're new adventures. So, let's all go out and find those.
I figured out that kayaking and and those types of activities they've been missing in my life. I didn't even know. And I mean, my sons and I and my daughter have been going out, and it's fantastic. Like I've said to my wife, there are things that are right in front of our eyes. Sometimes we're so busy, we just don't actually see them. And I have found one of the blessings from this time is that you actually had to stop, and you had no choice but to look around and to see what's around you. And so I've discovered so many things that I just didn't really pay attention to in the past. So that's been a pretty wonderful thing.
That's fantastic. I still think that you enjoy hanging out with me at trade shows more, but
100%.
kayaking, very, very close second.
100%. I would put that pretty close to number one. I do miss that stuff. So there's, a tweet and a retweet and connecting on LinkedIn, or, maybe chatting through those types of platforms is not the same as actually meeting people in person.
Yeah.
One day we'll be back together.
One day.
Soon.
Yeah.
I look forward to it. Well, to our listeners, as always, thank you so much for tuning in for an episode of the podcast. You can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow us on YouTube in order to get notified about new videos that post, and follow us on social just as well, where we always post new episodes. And as always, good luck out there. Happy selling, and we'll bring you more content soon.